Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're getting right into the engine room of financial independence.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of the conceptual heavy lifting, the mindset shifts, the mapping, and now we're ready to build the actual mechanism, the one that generates capital.
That's it. And it's so important to do this in the right order.
It is. So just to ground everyone, the structured path we are following is the three-stage strategy for building financial independence. And it was originated by Tamir Khaham. We're building this piece by sequential piece, making sure that foundation is solid before we put any weight on it.
That's absolutely right. And for anyone just joining, we have covered that critical foundational work in stage 1 and, the start of stage 2.
Right.
So that includes changing your perception of money, adopting the asset owner identity,
So crucial.
defining a measurable vision, financial mapping, conscious budgeting, and of course that cash flow stabilization.
Stopping the leaks.
Stopping the leaks, getting rid of overdrafts, just establishing that basic control.
Okay, so we achieved control over where the money's going. Now we hit, I think, the next critical behavioral step, which is creating the consistent habit that generates the capital we need to actually move into investing later on.
And this isn't about picking stocks.
No, not at all. This isn't about a mutual fund. It's about building the fundamental saving muscle itself. And the sources really, they hammer this point home with an insight that can be, well, genuinely provocative.
It really can be.
I want to deliver this quote because it's the anchor for our whole conversation today. It goes, "Did you know there are people with high salaries who don't save and people with low salaries who do? Do you save? If not, then saving is a muscle you've forgotten to use."
That quote is so profound. Because it completely reframes the whole discussion.
It does.
It just strips away the common excuse that, I don't earn enough. It argues that saving is the capacity, the habit that the asset owner needs to develop before they can do anything else.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because it does seem counterintuitive, right?
It can, yeah.
For the listener who is struggling, maybe working minimum wage or in a really high cost of living area, it feels intensely real to say, I just don't earn enough to save.
Of course.
Doesn't circumstance matter more than you're suggesting here?
Well, circumstance dictates the scale, for
Right.
sure, how much you can save.
Okay.
But the sources are crystal clear that income level does not determine saving ability. We're talking about the discipline itself.
So the habit.
The habit. It operates independently of the paycheck size. Think of that classic scenario, right?
Yeah.
The junior employee making $60,000 a year who saves $200 a month every single month
The clockwork.
versus say, a highly leveraged executive making $300,000 who lives paycheck to paycheck
Yeah.
and has zero emergency reserves.
That is the perfect illustration. The executive has a high income, but they have zero capacity to manage and retain capital.
None.
Yeah.
Because their spending just always matches or, exceeds their income. They're often victims of what we call lifestyle inflation, which is driven by that reactive survivor identity we've talked about.
The survivor sees more money and just translates it into more consumption.
Automatically.
Yeah.
The equation just stays unbalanced. Income minus expenses equals zero every single time.
And the most common error that reinforces this whole belief is what the sources call the myth of leftover money.
Ah, yeah.
This is that expectation that saving only happens if you wait until the end of the month, see what's left after all the bills and the fun, and then you decide to put it away.
And that approach fails. It fails every single time because it fundamentally misunderstands human psychology.
How so?
Well, our mental reward system, it just prioritizes immediate consumption over some abstract future gain.
So the coffee today versus the retirement in 30 years.
Exactly. If you view saving as optional or as a sacrifice you make after everything else, it turns saving into a punishment. And you're constantly fighting your own desire for immediate gratification.
And immediate gratification almost always wins.
Almost always. So the money doesn't just sit there. If it's not allocated for a specific future purpose by the asset owner, it is automatically drawn down by the reactive survivor identity.
And usually on things that generate zero long-term value.
That's the core realization we need here. Saving is not automatic. It is a conscious, non-negotiable priority.
You have to decide to do it.
When you adopt that asset owner identity, you allocate capital first. You are the owner of the capital. You decide where it goes before anyone else, before advertisers or retailers get a vote.
So it reverses the thinking.
It completely reverses the traditional thinking. You don't save because you have money. You have money because you save. The habit generates the capital. not the other way around.
That reframes the entire monthly budget, the whole map.
It does.
If I see saving as just, an optional line item like a subscription I can cancel, it's the first thing to go when things get tight.
Of course.
But if I treat it as the raw material, as capital, I'm allocating for my own future freedom, paying myself first.
Then it becomes non-negotiable. It's an operational cost, just like your rent or your utilities.
Exactly.
And this is where we see those two identities, the survivor and the asset owner, just diverge so clearly.
The survivor reacts.
The survivor reacts to circumstances. The asset owner creates circumstances. The asset owner starts by setting a target for capital generation, and then they adjust their lifestyle to meet that target.
And that control is the prerequisite for everything else in stage 2.
It is.
Which brings us to the next structural question. So, if we've established that saving is a priority, why is that discipline the necessary foundation before we even talk about investing?
Yeah.
I mean, why can't we, the newly minted asset owners, just jump ahead stage 3, go for the growth, the high returns?
It's a great question. And it connects directly to the strategic objective. Financial independence first, then wealth.
Okay.
Investment is deployment. Deployment requires fuel. If you cannot consistently create a surplus, if you haven't mastered saving, you have nothing to deploy.
You're an engine with no gas.
Exactly. You can read all the investment theory in the world, but if you have no capital fuel, the engine stays parked.
This is an issue of psychological consistency, then. I think the sources highlight that those who can't save also won't be consistent investors.
Absolutely. The behavior needed for consistent capital accumulation, that mechanical act of putting money aside every month, it's structurally identical to the behavior you need for consistent investment contributions. If I struggle to put $200 in a savings account, I will definitely struggle to put $500 into a brokerage account.
Especially when the market gets volatile.
Well, especially then.
Yeah.
Because when the market dips or some external pressure comes up, the person who hasn't secured that saving habit is far more likely to panic.
They pull their money out.
Or worse, they sell their assets to cover some unexpected expense because they never built an emergency buffer.
So that's why we insist that consistency has to come before scale.
Precisely. Tamir Khaham's framework, it's all built on this systematic thinking. It prioritizes mastering the mechanism, no matter how small the initial input is.
So building the habit with $50 a month is more important than worrying about a 10% return.
Way more important. Because if your ability to generate capital is fragile, any market gains you make are also fragile. They're unstable. You're always one unexpected bill away from having to liquidate everything.
So the asset owner's goal is real financial independence. It's built on discipline, control, ownership.
And all of that has to be secure before you even think about seeking growth. Saving is your internal funding mechanism. You have to prove you can generate your own fuel first.
Okay. At this point, it feels really important to pause and clarify something essential.
Yeah, good idea. Especially since we're talking about mindsets and big strategic frameworks.
This episode is not about financial techniques and not about optimization or investing.
Right.
I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice.
Yes. What we are doing here is building foundations control before growth.
And it's important to say this clearly.
Just because this approach worked for the creator of the strategy does not mean it will work for you. There are no guarantees. This is a thinking framework.
Responsibility for decisions and outcomes always remains with the listener.
We are focused purely on conceptual strategy.
That clarity is vital because of the behavior we're talking about today, that saving habit, it's the prerequisite for all the hard practical steps that come next.
Exactly. We've established that building the saving habit is non-negotiable. It's the core behavior that fuels the asset owner identity. It shifts you from being reactive to being strategic.
And it ties back directly to the structure of the 3-stage strategy. We are still firmly in stage 2.
Building financial resilience.
Right. This stage is all about securing that foundation of controlled cash flow before we can even think about proceeding to the growth stage.
And that saving habit is the prerequisite for every single sequential step we're going to cover next. I mean, if we look ahead.
Yeah, what's coming up?
Well, once this habit is in place, the immediate next action is establishing the emergency fund and your liquidity network.
Which has to cover at least 3 months of expenses.
At least. So the emergency fund is really just a large, dedicated, crisis-proof extension of the saving habit.
That makes perfect sense.
And that's followed by managing and eliminating bad debt, which actively destroys the saving capacity you just built, and then, crucially, implementing automation to lock that habit in place.
And all of those steps rely on what we've talked about today.
Every single one. The sequence is everything. You cannot build your resilience network without first proving you can consistently generate the capital.
So what does this all mean for the listener right now? I mean, if they've been operating from that myth of leftover money.
They need to re-examine their budget and make saving the very first line item.
It's a shift in priority, not necessarily a shift in income.
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
And, the sources often mention that most lottery winners eventually return to financial distress, or even worse.
Right, I've heard that.
It's because they lacked the proper psychological anchor. They didn't have the asset owner habits. They were survivors who suddenly got a bunch of capital, not owners who generated it themselves.
That's a powerful distinction.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is this. If you suddenly received a significant windfall today, let's say $100,000, would you operate from the identity of the asset owner?
Meaning saving a portion and deploying the rest strategically.
Or would you operate as the reactive survivor and just let lifestyle inflation eat it all up? Your current saving habit, no matter how small it is the best indicator of how you would manage that future wealth.
So start building the muscle now.
Start building the muscle now, regardless of the size of your current income.
That is a truly provocative thought for all of us to sit with. Join us next time as we take this newly generated capital and dive into establishing that crucial financial safety net, the emergency fund.